انا بقول لكم اهو، لو الشعب قعد هيندم طول العمر. والافنديه اللي قاعدين لي في مدينه نصر، والافنديه اللي بيقعدوا لي في امتداد رمسيس، والافنديه اللي بيقعدوا لي في مصر الجديده وما اشبه، لو قعدتوا في بيوتكم وما جيتوش معانا يوم 25 يناير بعد ما هنعلن احنا هنعمل ايه، صدقوني هيدخلوا عليكم البيوت يدبحوكم. والله لا هيدبحوكم، لانهم عارفين ان انتوا معاكم فلوس، فهيدخلوا بقى ياخدوا فلوسكم. واخد بالك يا استاذ انت وهو، يا ست انت وهي، واللي قاعد عمال عامل نفسه انه واد فاهم بقى في السياسه ومحلل، عشان خاطري خليها بعد يوم 25 بعد ما تنزل وابقى حلل براحتك. تمام؟ انا بقول واجري وصوابي على الله، كلام يعني ربنا وحده الشاهد عليه. معانا برضو فيديو تاني هنشوفه. شوفوا بقى الاستاذ عمر عفيفي. استاذ عمر عفيفي بيهاجم الاستاذه حياه الدرديري. يا عمر انا بقول لك كلمتين، بقول لك كلمتين يا عمر. اتقي شر الحليم اذا غضب. انت متقدم فيك بلاغات للنائب العام. الشعب هيطلع ان شاء الله وهنقول هنروح على السفارة الامريكية نطالب بتسليمك علشان نحاكمك، بس وقتك لسه ما جاش. احنا حاطين لك ساعة للصفر، شعب مصر حاطط لك ساعة صفر. كلامي واضح يا عمر. اسأل على سحر حمدي اللي انت كنت متجوزها الاول. عيب عليك، انت واخد فلوس من احمد رمزي الممثل قبل ما رجلك اتكسرت، ما يصحش. شوفوا بقى حضراتكم الفيديو ده، وبعد ما تشوفوه انا هتكلم عليه.
In January 2011, the Egyptians gathered en masse in the Cairo streets, rallying against their 30-year Mubarak dictatorship, calling for an end to his regime. But what about the inception of this eventual revolution? How did it all begin? Just a few days into the Egyptian revolution, a BBC article listed the key opposition groups which had been instrumental in starting the uprising. At the top of this list was featured a group called the April 6 Youth Movement. The April 6 Youth Movement at the top of the BBC's list was hailed by the BBC as being the main organising force behind the early demonstrations. The BBC also stated that the April 6 Youth Movement started the call for the first day of anger on Tuesday, January the 25th from its website, and that the movement began as a Facebook group in 2008. Other online news outlets echoed this all as fact, that the April 6 Youth Movement started online as a Facebook group, and that had happened around 3 years before the actual uprising in 2008. Point 1. The April 6 Youth Movement began as a Facebook group in 2008. Yet more media outlets would report on how the youth movement's use of social media was instrumental in the Egyptian uprising, and that it was key to the scale of the protests and their success. Point 2. The April 6 youth movement used social media to organise itself. The year that the April 6 youth movement was formed, 2008, was an important year for social media-based activism. As stated on the America.gov website, where the Alliance for Youth Movement Summit of the same year was announced, the Alliance for Youth Movement Summit was to be held in December of that year in New York City in the USA. And as stated in the article, members of Facebook, Google and MTV, as well as members of the US State Department, would convene at the summit to bring together global youth groups and technological experts to find the best ways to promote freedom and justice around the world through the use of social media. The Alliance for Youth Movement Summit also has its own website called movement.org, whereupon you may find its mission statement to promote and instruct grassroots activism throughout the world with an emphasis on technology and social media. The summit's list of attendees makes for very interesting reading. Convening at the summit in December 2008 were Obama's presidential campaign media operatives, the World Bank, the mainstream media, Homeland Security, the US State Department and representatives from Freedom House. With them at the summit, according to their own website, were members of Egypt's main opposition group, the April 6 Youth Movement. Point 3. The April 6 Youth Movement attended the Alliance for Youth Movement Summit in New York City in December 2008, just 8 months after they were formed, which was also attended by big-time US establishment operatives. This summit, which the April 6 Youth Movement attended, had some instantly recognizable branding from some very well-known corporate sponsorship: Pepsi and MTV, CBS and MSNBC.
The word of massive protest to oust unpopular leaders, first in Tunisia, now in Egypt, was spread not by posters or meetings or word of mouth. It spread at the speed of the internet by email, Twitter, cell phone, and instant messaging. Listen.
And this is why you're seeing this kind of brush fire effect in the Middle East, where revolutions are popping up in just about every dictatorial and autocratic regime in the region.
And when the Egyptian government cut off internet service, some were able to get around the cutoff because of help from a global internet site, including a Facebook page with 270,000 followers called Alliance for Youth Movement. It began under former Secretary of State Condi Rice, continued by Secretary Clinton with the help of Google and others. It's been coaching Democratic groups in advance on how to use social media to organize and how to circumvent any governmental interference.
Point 4. The Alliance for Youth Movement Summit, attended by the April 6 Youth Movement, had some heavy Western corporate sponsorship. A co-founder of the Alliance for Youth Movements.org, Jared Cohen, has a colourful history. His profile states he was an adjunct fellow at the Council on Foreign Relations and worked under successive Secretaries of State, Condi Rice at the Bush administration and Obama's Hillary Clinton. Point 5. The Alliance for Youth Movement was founded by an ex-government official. One of the attendees of the AYM Summit in 2008 was Freedom House, a supposedly independent, freedom-loving organisation that receives vast amounts of US government funding. In 2009, Freedom House sent a high-level delegation to Egypt. Point 6. The AYM Summit in 2008 was attended by Freedom House, who sent a delegation to Egypt in 2009, a year after the AYM Summit in New York and 2 years before the protests in Egypt. The April 6 movement had been reported as supporting Mohamed El-Baradei, a potential Egyptian presidential candidate. Al Jazeera reported that